Personnel Committee, the Bellingham City Council. Joining me on this committee are Councilmember Gene Knutson and normally Terry Borneman. Terry is not here today with an excused absence, so Jack Weiss has agreed to step in. The committee has two items before us today. The first one is an ordinance approving the advanced refunding of an outstanding 2005 limited tax general obligation bond. This is basically refinancing in order to save money, and we're setting the conditions the Finance Department can use to achieve that refinancing, though our Finance Director, Mr. Henshaw, I think he'll explain this isn't a done deal. It does depend on what kind of rates we get when we actually go out.
Correct. Thank you, Michael. Brian Henshaw, Finance Department. This ordinance would basically delegate authorities based on the criteria listed on page 30 for me to approve a refunding of these bonds. These are general obligation bonds that were issued in 2005 by the city. They were used for the purchase of the Colony Wharf property and also to pre-fund remediation projects down on Cornwall and Central and Holly Street. We're 9 years into those bonds. After 10 years, they are allowed to be refunded. So this is a pre-refunding. So we're going to go out and issue bonds in December. The money is put into escrow so that in December of next year, after the 10 years has elapsed on the original bonds, we can actually refund these. The whole purpose of doing this is to take advantage of the interest rates today. They're at very low interest rates. We hope to achieve savings, net savings after issuance costs of between $300,000 and $400,000. That is dependent upon the market rates December 3rd when we would actually negotiate the sale of these bonds. And it's also dependent upon our bond rating. We had a teleconference with Standard & Poor's last week, and we have a AA plus rating currently that hopefully will be renewed, and all of those factors then go into the market pricing that would happen in December. Basically, the ordinance would give authority for 120 days in case the market changes drastically. We have a little bit of flexibility in when we can issue them. That's the reason we're doing a negotiated sale versus a competitive sale. And then it also outlines specific criteria for the interest rates and also the net savings that would need to be achieved before I could accept these bonds. We have the advisors, Piper Jaffray is our financial advisors, and then Pacifica is the attorneys that represent the city in preparing these bond ordinances, and D.A. Davidson would be the underwriters of the bonds that are actually going to purchase these and then reissue them to investors. Let's see, I think that's the highlights of the ordinance, unless you had any questions.
I do have two questions. As you indicated, we're actually going to be hiring special bond counsel and other professional help, which will cost some money. The $300,000 to $400,000 savings, that's over and above having to spend on all the transactional costs. Is that correct?
That's correct, yes.
Great. Committee?
Move approval.
We have a motion for approval. So just to clarify one more thing, I just want to make sure that people understand it. We're not actually refunding the bond this year. We're pre-refunding it to lock in these rates. The money will sit in an escrow, and then we'll actually do the refunding in a year when we think rates might be higher. So we're going to lock in those lower rates.
Yeah, correct. We actually complete the transaction this year, so from our standpoint, they're done. But the bondholders won't have their bonds called until next year. So it's a third-party transaction.
The escrow company will take care of the transaction next year.
Correct.
Great. Any more discussion on this? If not, all those in favor of recommending approval of this ordinance tonight, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes 3-0. I'll bring forward a unanimous recommendation tonight. The second item is an ordinance establishing the property tax levy rate for 2015. I believe for this one we were given a supplemental package which doesn't have all the extra numbers that were accidentally dumped into the package. But this does neatly summarize, especially on this table right here, what will happen with our property tax rate. I'll let you describe the details, Mr. Henshaw, but basically we're taking our maximum 1% increase, which is less than the rate of inflation, and even with new construction, our levy rate for your average home will be basically the exact same. Is that correct?
Yeah, thank you. Yes, so before November 30th of each year, council needs to set the levy rate for the coming year, and then we send that over to the assessor's office. Unfortunately, we don't get the final numbers until the end of December, so all this is done on a forecast based on conversations with the assessor's office and estimates for new construction and also any credits or adjustments that they might do. I will apologize for all the extra pages that got put into the packet. That wasn't the intent. This was one page out of a spreadsheet, and we got all of the spreadsheets included instead of just the one. But in page 97 of your packet, or else the supplemental packet there, is the bond ordinance, and we are taking the 1% allowed by statutory limit plus any adjustments for new construction or any other adjustments that the assessor might do, and those involve credits, also utility valuations, and sometimes there are negatives and sometimes they're positive. So it is an estimated amount. Right now I'm estimating it to be an increase of about $340,000 over the current one. And then Exhibit A, also in your packet, shows you the breakdown of where that money goes within the city. There's just over $14 million goes to the general fund, another $2 million goes to the fire and police pensions, and then $4.7 million goes to greenways, and the home fund would get another $3 million. So all of those would add up to about the $340,000.
Committee? Jack?
Well, knowing that I may not be able to ever run for state elected office in the 42nd district, I'm going to recommend approval of this.
We have a motion recommending approval of the ordinance to adopt a 1% property tax increase this year. Any further discussion? Gene?
I'm sure it's in the budget, Brian, but where does the 230, where do we put the 200? How does the breakdown of the 213,000? Does it just go into the general fund?
No, you mean the total 340?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sure it's somewhere. But
So on the spreadsheet that should be in your supplementary packet, you can see the increases. It depends on the levy rates.
what page you on, Brian?
Well, in the book, it's on page 79.
Okay.
Yeah. So the increase in the general fund is about $250,000. The increase in fire pension is about $25,000. You can just compare them.
Oh, I see.
So it's spread out between all three of those. The home levy funds are actually fixed at the $3 million. So those levy rates will go down, and the rest of them vary depending on where the assessed valuation and the amount comes in.
And they do that every year now, don't they? Assess homes. They don't. It's not every 4 years. It's every year.
Correct. The assessor statistically and through computers increase everybody's, and it's supposed to go up overall between 3% and 4% this year. So that's his estimate.
So, Brian, this ordinance adopts 1% increase, but the actual levy rate of estimated 1.62128, that'll actually be maybe tweaked by some hundredth of a decimal point when all the numbers are in?
Correct. It's based on the assessed valuation.
Okay. Any further discussion of this? All in favor of, Jack?
Well, just one. I don't think you meant to have this information in the packet, but I wanted to talk a little bit about the greenways. It looks like we're right on schedule of what our projections were. We're a little bit behind, but not that much. This would be on page 83 of the packet.
Sorry. They included all the spreadsheets, and to be honest with you, they might not have been updated, so I'd need to go update greenways. Last I looked, though, we were pretty close. So we started out slightly ahead, and then it was down below. But my guess is that at the end of this year, going into next year, it should be right on. So I can give you those numbers. I can.
Okay, because, when we had greenways at the time, or when we were contemplating this, it seemed like we were going to be using much more optimistic numbers about what our growth rate was and our annexation rates, and it's interesting that we're still pretty much on track, even with those high assumptions we had at the very beginning. So that's actually good.
I'll go back and make sure that that's current and up to date with the best numbers, and then I'll send it to everybody, and we can take another look at it, but it's pretty close.
Any further discussion? Okay, we have a motion to recommend approval of the ordinance establishing the property tax rate for 2015. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? I'll bring that forward with a unanimous recommendation tonight. That concludes the business of the Finance Personnel Committee.